So what I did is I wanted to get out of the push carts. So everybody used to go to the place called the coffee store. This man used to roast his own coffee, and he had a store. He started with just coffee, but now you had all the other things that go with it. My mother used to go buy coffee there, you know, and he always had one or two young guys working for him, at least one, sometimes two. So my mother said to him, says, you know, when you're looking for a young man to work in the store, let me know. I got a nice young man. He's working on the push carts, but I don't want him on the push cart. I'd like to have him working here. All right, he says, I'll let you know. Hey, a couple of weeks later, she goes in to buy the coffee. Your boy still want him a job? Yeah, tell him to come and see me. So my mother says, go talk to the coffee man. I went and see the coffee man. He hired me to work in the coffee store. Boy, I learned a lot in the coffee store too. Now it's a different environment. However, I got to see a lot more people indoors, and the man used to roast his own coffee. I saw him roasting the coffee. The guy, I mean, I'm telling you, he made money like you couldn't believe. His son, he ran what we call United Coffee Store, and he had that. But now we got to be 1941. 1941. How old was I, Bob?
Oh, God.
14?
29, 39, you'd be 10.
14.
Yeah, you're 14.
14. 1941. What happened in 1941?
The war.
War. We had war. It started in 39 when we were not at war, but we were making munitions and stuff for the British. They called it Lend-Lease. They called it Lend-Lease. And we were sending everything over to London. They didn't have the money to pay us, so they owed us. We never got paid, right? But anyhow, that's the way it worked. And so now people were working, Bobby. They were working. Remember I told you about having a job? I had no money. Now I got money. I'll tell you, money is better. So what happened was that 1941, 1942, now we're at war. Everything is rationed. You can't buy anything. You had the meats, everything you had. You wanted coffee, it was rationed. They used to give you a ration book. If you ask your grandmother to show you, she's got an old ration book, unless she gave it to one of you kids. Gave it to your father, let your father show it to you. You went to the store and you gotta give him the ration book, and he takes out the ration stamp, and you can get a pound of sugar with a ration. You used up your sugar stamp, no sugar. You used up your coffee stamp, no coffee. Meats, forget it, that was tough. But you had so many stamps for meat. Every person got so many stamps. We lived with a ration book, but we had money. It was still better, right? I worked for the coffee store. The man, he had a son that worked for Standard Grocery, who was a wholesale distributor. And he started working there when he was young. He got out of the store. He got a chance to go to work for Standard Grocery. And he would go around, and he was like a salesman, and he would take orders from all the stores. And then they would ship to him everything that they ordered from the Standard Grocery. But they were smart, and he told his father, we only got so much of this, we only got. So his father stopped buying everything he could. Tuna fish was big. Tuna fish in cans, imported from Italy. They had so much of that. They'd take it, and he'd get like 10 cases. And they'd deliver it, not to the store, but to the father's house. And they'd have him put it in his basement. And he would lock it up in the cellars. And they had all kind of various canned goods and stuff, and it's loaded his basement. That was because he had already loaded where the store was. Now what happened, you couldn't buy it anymore. Just couldn't buy it. And he would have it. So
Hidden in
when
the
people
basement.
went in and they wanted a can of tuna fish, let's say a can of tuna fish sold for 15 cents. I don't know, let's use that as an example, but I saw this. And you wanted a can of tuna fish. They said, we might have some this weekend. You come back this weekend and say, ask me. Don't say nothing. Just ask me. If we got some, I'll save you a can. Of course, every weekend, we'd go over to the house and take a case of tuna fish, bring it into the store from his basement. He couldn't buy it. From his basement, put it there. Now, he probably would have paid 5 cents a can for that tuna fish, right? The regular price was like 15 cents. And people would come in and say, his name was Nicholas, but in Italian, Nicola, Nicola, Garganese. I knew it. I know it very, very well. Garganese. He ran the coffee store. So you went to Nicola and said, Nicola, you get the tuna? Aspetta. You get a little bag, and he'd reach under the counter and throw it in the bag and wrap it up and have it there for him. Of course, he'd give it to him, provided he had bought other goods in the store. If he just went in for a can of tuna fish, I'm sorry it didn't come in. But if you bought groceries and then said to him, Nicola, you got the tuna fish?
Tell
And he'd
him,
put it
tell
in the
him
bin.
about the time that the coffee switch wasn't working for the electricity.
Oh, I'll tell you that story. So, but anyhow, he made a ton of money selling that stuff. He bought it for a nickel, was selling it for 20 cents. They used to call that black market. If you want, and all the merchants did that. So when you went to the merchant, you wanted to buy a little piece of meat. If they knew you and stuff, they'd say, well, Lagarde, you're gonna have the stamp. But I used the stamp to buy a little oil, no stamp. Well, I gotta get at the black market. Ubrezza, you know, the price, oh. So you take a little piece of meat that he used to give you without a stamp. Ordinarily, you'd pay 20 cents for it, he'd get 40 cents for it. But he'd give you the piece of meat without the stamp, right? He had hoarded the meat. But I worked for the coffee store doing all this stuff. He used to roast the coffee. He would also grind it for you. They had the grinders, you know, and he'd weigh it, get the coffee, pour it in and grind it up for you. So you had a bag of coffee all pre-ground to make coffee.
Just a minute.
One day, I used to go to work after school. I used to get out of school at 3:30,
How old were you when you worked there?
14.
$14.
Who's out there?
Caroline.
Who?
Caroline.
Your friend or?
Jesse wants to know when you guys
Oh,
want to have
Carrie.
lunch.
No, my girlfriend.
Hi, Caroline. How are you?
I'm doing well. How's it going
Good.
out here?
Good,
What?
thank you.
Jesse wants to know when you
Bobby, you want
I have to
quit?
recharge my battery in maybe 20 minutes to half an hour.
You want to just take a break at 1 o'clock?
What time is it now?
What?
What time is it now?
10 minutes to 1.
What do you
Oh,
want to
okay.
All right, how about 1 o'clock at the Nutcracker?
10 minutes to 1. Bobby, do you want to
1:30 at the
quit?
Nutcracker?
1:30 at the
1:30
Nutcracker.
at the Nutcracker. Go to the right-hand side of
Is the blackjack turning? You won?
No, at one.
Oh, wow.
Bobby, do you want to quit?
No, we still got some time. You want to come on? Come on.
I just want to check it.
Am I
check
girl?
it out.
Back up.
Like that? Come on.
What?
You can come up and sit
No, it's okay. I'll
1:30 at the Nutcracker on the right-hand side.
okay.
1:30 at the Nutcracker on the right-hand side. Lunch is 1:30.
At the Nutcracker. Okay,
No, if you're
we'll
not
talk
at the Nutcracker, at the Windjammer
with you.
on the right-hand side. They don't have lunch at the Nutcracker.
Okay, I'll just put shoes on. I can go.
So you were 14 working for the roaster.
Yeah, the reason I tell you that, when I turned 16 years old, I quit the coffee store because I got a better paying job by the hour. You know, he was
'Cause he
paying,
was
I used to
16.
go to work after school, get out of school at 3:30, and I'd go home, and I'd go home, I don't know what I would do, and at 4 o'clock I was at the coffee store, and I would work at the coffee store after school and all day Saturday, right?
You tell him about the switch?
Oh, the switch you wanted me to tell you. Well, of course, I had learned a little bit about electricity, and when I was in high school, I had taken, they had classes in machine tools and so forth, but I had learned a little about electricity. So one day I go to work after school, I walk into the coffee store, and there's Nicola over there, and he's beside himself. I'm telling you. He was chewing on nails and spitting out spikes. He was so mad. So I said, Nicola, what's the matter? The switch out of the coffee machine isn't gone. Cannot sell coffee all day. He couldn't sell coffees. He couldn't grind it. Well, you got to fix it. I called Mr. Scapoletti. I knew Mr. Scapoletti. I could tell you about him. He was supposedly an electrician. He says, I got to have Mr. Scapoletti come change the switch so we can grind the coffee. I looked at it, went over there, boom, boom. I said, Nicola, I can fix this. You don't need Mr. Scapoletti. I'll go over to Enterprise Hardware. I get her the switch, and I put her the switch in for you. You grind the coffee. No trouble. I can do it. Come here, Angelo. Come here. He still called me Angelo, right? I told you, Bob became good after 16 years old. He said, I want to tell you, you know this is store, what we do? What do you do, Nico? We sell coffee and groceries. We make money selling coffee and grocery. Mr. Scapoletti, he's an electrician. He makes money, fix the electrician. We sell the coffee, he makes electricity. You don't touch. When Mr. Scapoletti come, he fixed the switch. Okay? Mr. Scapoletti fixed the switch. He came 10 minutes before we were going home. I could have fixed the switch in 10 minutes, right? And he would have been selling coffee. But he wouldn't let me do it.
So tell him how you met Mom.
Oh, I put that in writing.
Tell him. Tell him how you met Mom.
Well, what happened, I met Mom, well, first of all, you're going to skip all my military. You shouldn't skip all my military.
Okay.
But Mom,
you
got it in writing.
Well, you can tell him about military.
Tell him the military?
Sure.
Okay, so what happened was, at 18 years old, you had to sign up for the draft. My mother and father would not let me volunteer. You could volunteer when you were 17, but your parents had to sign a waiver so you could join the military service. But if you didn't sign the waiver, you couldn't go in. You would get drafted into the service. The day you were turned 18, instead of blowing out the candle on the cake, you had to go to the high school, and where they had an office for the draft. And you had to sign up for the draft to go into the service. So I was 18 years old, I signed up for the service. Now what happened is, the war's coming to an end. Say that you still had to sign up. But I found out later, because of what happened to me in the military, I wound up in a headquarters detachment. And we were destroying records, we were saving records, and I had access to a lot of information. And I had a lot of information relative to my military unit, which was the 192nd Ordnance Battalion. And we ran the Ordnance Battalion for all of Japan, south of Tokyo. We were in Cochin.